Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to the rest of the world that's tuning in. Huge day in Washington, D.C. today. President Trump is announcing his proposed plan for Middle Eastern peace with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his side. We will wait to see how the Arab states respond, and that will tell us whether it has a prayer. Big day. Kickoff is today. Things are getting worse in China. Hong Kong, China is going to be drastically reduced significantly due to coronavirus, according to the Wall Street Journal. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said cross-border travel between the city and the mainland would be reduced significantly due to the spreading outbreak of the Wuhan coronavirus. The Telegraph has a columnist, Holmes Chan, whose column reads, Hong Kong's coronavirus panic reminds me of the dark days of SARS. And that's because the death toll in mainland China has passed 100. It's now 108 people have died from the virus. Beijing has lost its first fatality. And overnight, it went to 40. I always want my statistics to be correct. The number of confirmed cases in China surged to 4,515 as of January 27. From 2,835 a day earlier. Not the kind of growth rate you want. Meanwhile, in the United States, according to the Washington Post, the U.S. is expanding screening of passengers to 20 airports. A little bit late, but better late than never. Those 20 airports still only pick up 90% of the passengers. It's not fast enough. Now, the markets took the hit I expected yesterday. And they're not so bad this morning. In fact, let me give you a pre-market report brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. Andrew and Todd lend you money. They do not broker out your phone call. And they do things like consolidate your debt and refinance your house or get you a new house or help you do a reverse mortgage. Or if you're a veteran, get you 100% down. And boy, are they... I got a note from Andrew. Yes, indeed, they are booming. Unfortunately, bad news in the world is good news for people who are buying real estate because the 10-year Treasury dropped down to 1.6%. I didn't think I'd ever say that, 1.6%. As money flooded into U.S. Treasuries yesterday, 1.6% is the return on them. That's not the rate you'll get on your 15 or 30-year mortgage. It's the rate on which they are set. So now is the time to call 888-888-1172. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian at andrewandtodd.com or with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And so they lend you the money, and when the 10 years at 1.6, you can't do any better than that. Yesterday, the Dow lost 453 points because of coronavirus. NASDAQ was down 175 points because of coronavirus. Asian stocks are hammered again by virus fears. Japan is down 0.5%. But in the United States, everything in the market is a little bit green as we begin to see our government getting organized. The S&P is up 10 points. NASDAQ up 43, which is 0.5%. The Dow up 80, which is up 0.29%. But it's if and when the 10-year Treasury starts to rebound and move higher that I'll believe that the markets believe that the virus is contained. Because until it does, I'm not going to believe that it is. According to the Washington Post, officials in the U.S. and China have said the best estimate so far of the coronavirus's contagiousness is that it will spread to between 1.5 and 3 people from every person who is sick. Now, that's much less transmissible than measles, for which the rate is as high as 18.2. But any number above 1 is problematic. Ian Lipkin, director of the Columbia University Center for Infection and Immunity, said it's still too early to predict how widespread or deadly the outbreak will be. He added that putting the outbreak in the context of other prevalent diseases was key. It's fair to say that every year there are 30,000 to 40,000 people who die of the flu in the United States. It is very unlikely we'll ever reach the level we annually lose to the flu. Good. When people believe that, the panic will be over on the markets. So watch the markets. Now, John Bolton's book upended proceedings. I still think there are only 2 Republicans who want to call witnesses, Susan Collins and Mitt Romney, but we will see. Yesterday, Pat Philbin, the deputy White House counsel, I think the superstar thus far of these proceedings, took to the floor of the Senate and said this about the House proceeding, cut number 20.
Cross-examination of witnesses in particular is one of the most important procedural protections for any American. The Supreme Court has explained that for over 250 years, our legal tradition has recognized cross-examination as the greatest legal engine ever invented for the discovery of truth. So why did House Democrats jettison every precedent and every principle of due process in the way they devised these hearing procedures? Why did they devise a process that kept the president locked out of any hearings for 71 of the 78 days of the so-called investigation? I would submit because their process was never about finding the truth. Their process was about achieving a predetermined outcome on a timetable and having it done by Christmas. And that is what they achieved.
That is what they achieved. Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, came out and summarized what I'll play for you after the break, the presentation by Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and part of the Trump defense team. But Ted Cruz summarized it, cut number 23.
This afternoon was devastating for the House managers. For the first time in the entire proceeding, we have heard just of the beginning of the serious evidence of corruption involving Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company that paid Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year.
So
while Joe Biden, let me answer. I'll answer the question.
Could you answer the question? I appreciate it.
Let me answer the question without interrupting me, please.
You got it.
Burisma paid Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year, while Hunter Biden threatened Ukraine to withhold $1 billion in aid unless and until they fired the prosecutor investigating his son. Joe Biden threatened. Joe Biden is Vice President of the United States, and we just saw a video, which I would encourage every news outlet here to actually show the video of Joe Biden bragging how he told the president of Ukraine that he was going to cut off $1 billion, he was going to block $1 billion in foreign aid to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor. And in Joe Biden's own words, son of a bitch, they fired the guy.
So why not have Bolton testify? You said you'd answer the question. Hold on, Andrew. Let me answer the question. I did ask the question. Why?
So I get that the press loves to obsess over the latest bombshell. Listen, I don't know what John Bolton's book says or doesn't say. I've seen the New York Times coverage, but at the end of the day, it doesn't impact the legal issue before this Senate. The legal issue before this Senate is whether a president has the authority to investigate corruption. So the House managers built their entire case on the proposition that investigating Burisma corruption, investigating the Bidens for corruption, was baseless and a sham.
It is baseless and a sham, and Pam Bondi proved that, and I'm going to play that in a second. I do also want to let you know, over on my Twitter account, I have retweeted a GoFundMe page that is supporting the Altabelli family. As many of you have read, the helicopter crash that claimed the life of Kobe and his daughter also killed 7 other people, among them John, Carrie, and Alyssa Altabelli. John, Carrie, and Alyssa were the father, stepmother, and younger sister of one of the scouts, J.J. Altabelli, who was in high school with my son in Irvine, California. They didn't know each other very well. They had many common friends, but it really racked. This is very upsetting to Irvine, and it's a great GoFundMe page. The 27-year-old J.J. is now going to be sole surviving member of his family for his little sister and going to need help. And so I think support for the Altabelli family, whether or not you're a Red Sox fan or you grew up in Irvine, is a great thing. And I appreciate. If you want to see that, go over to Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. You'll find it. Altabelli GoFundMe. It's put together by. It's a legit. Paul Taboni is a friend. It's a legit of the family, not mine, but it's a legit GoFundMe account. So if you want to help them, by all means, that's the place to do that. When we come back, Pam Bondi on the floor of the Senate, ripping the House managers and Hunter Biden. Do not miss it. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.